Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning. It's 29 degrees here in Lagos, and we don't know what it's going to come to in the course of the day, even though in some parts of Lagos already today it has rained. I don't know what part of the city you are or where you are in the world, but here in Lagos it's 29 degrees. Welcome to the show. Where are you taking us this morning?
Well, we're taking you to see the old Jebba Bridge. Ayo, I'll tell you something. You know, this is the stuff you only read in books. I know that for those of us who grew up in my time, it is different from your time, Ayo. I know. But we only read of this particular bridge in books, especially for those who were able to use the rail line at that time to cross over the River Niger at the old Jebba Bridge, you know, which you can clearly see on your screen. You can see that it's one of them is a rail line, is a rail bridge. The other, you know, takes vehicles. But that's precisely where we're taking you to, the old Jebba Bridge, which crosses the River Niger.
You know, I remember that rail line. The one and only trip I've taken to Kano by rail, and it was it was when we got here. It's an iconic site, right? That's the covering over the rail line. You can't miss it. It's like passing through the Lekki-Ikoyi bridge, link bridge. You would always remember that the suspension right there above you as you drive under those cables. So it's the same with this bridge for me. I remember it because you can't forget it. You can't ignore it. You can't lose sight of it. It is right there the moment you start to cross. Whatever the purpose is, well, it may not be unconnected with the fact that you run the risk of falling off into the river if you don't have a guardrail or something like that. But yes, it is definitely an experience for those who experienced it. Well, some read it in books. I'm not talking to anyone, but some people also experienced it, Maupe.
I'm glad for you, Ayo. I do know that for the people of Jebba, this is a significant piece of infrastructure. Clearly, the old rail bridge has not been used in a very long time, and they also have a bridge there that uses which cars can crisscross. However, the River Niger has just been where it is. What I can tell you, Ayo, is that this is a very rare view of the River Niger, because from the side that you can see the hills surrounding the River Niger. The part that a lot of people are really used to is the part in Anambra, which crosses to Asaba in Delta State. But this part, people rarely ever see. I mean, when you look at the hills surrounding it, you know that it's the River Niger, but you're wondering, where precisely is this located? Well, for those who are wondering, you know, this particular bridge was built by the colonial masters, and it also is supposed to link the northern part of Nigeria with the southern part. The hills really make it a very picturesque scene, and I don't know what has been done to this particular video, but it looks really, really lovely to look at.
Absolutely, Marwa, absolutely. And just the mere sight of it tells you that this is ancient. So yes, River Niger, the whole infrastructure you see there date back well into possibly even pre-independence of Nigeria. And so, Marwa, of all the times you love this view, and guess what? The moment you started to talk about the picturesque nature of this site, it reminds me of the postcards of old. You took a picture, on the reverse side, you send a message to someone. So just take a picture of this Jebba Bridge, and on the other side, you write a note and send to someone. Gosh, I'm getting euphoric here. Okay.
Well, let's leave this for a while for viewers to take in. Just in case you are wondering, it was completed in 1915. That's just how old this bridge is. A piece of history for you right there on the screen. But we wish that we could dwell a little more on history. While we wish that we could do that, clearly Okay, maybe the director is also wishing we could do that a little. We have to come back to the reality that is our daily existence. And in recent times, things have been a bit unsettled in the north-central part of Nigeria. Coincidentally, this particular bridge which we just showed you is in the north-central region of Nigeria. It's in Kwara State. That's the old Jebba Bridge. But you also have a number of communities in north-central Nigeria which has been experiencing a bit of unsettlement in recent times. As a matter of fact, what has happened in Plateau State will qualify for more than a bit of unsettlement. Some people will say what we're beginning to see is nearing a massacre. Well, it does appear that Benue State started to feel the ripples of that. It's unsure if what has happened in Benue is connected in any way with what has happened in Plateau State. But yesterday, there were reports that 7 people died in Ankpa community, a community in Otukpo local government area of Benue State. Well, we'll be sinking our teeth into that particular discussion after we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Indeed. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're about to enter our main discussion for today, which centers on the incident that happened in Otobi community in Ankpa district, Otukpo local government area, where we understand that 7 people lost their lives, several other people were wounded, and some houses were burnt in that particular local government after an attack by suspected herdsmen. It's not certain if they're herdsmen or they were gangsters, but this is what we are now dealing with in Benue State. We've seen those attacks happen on the plateau, and it's uncertain if these 2 attacks are connected. But this morning we're being joined by Mr. Abba Ejembe, who is a former national president of Ankpa Community Development Association and also a former director of administration at the NCA. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, this is really heartbreaking news to hear from your community. Our deepest condolences with members of your community, you know, losing 7 people in one fell swoop. How many?
As at this morning, it is 11. 11
people?
Yes.
So the figures are going up. Yes. It does appear that...
Well, 2 are critically lying there in the hospital in Otukpo.
So their lives are currently hanging in the balance?
In the balance, yes.
So tell us what precisely happened.
At about 5:30 p.m. yesterday, some fellows just strolled into the community and opened fire. No provocation. The reason and rhyme to this and reason is baffling, is befuddling. Nobody knows. How
many people did you hear came into the community?
We're getting different figures because of the scare. People see things under that situation differently. So we don't have an exact figure. We hear between 15, 20, 30, all sorts of figures. So we don't really know. But there is a background to this. In the last 10, 15 days, there have been several attacks at homes, in people's homes. One of them was a retired controller of immigration, you know, who they went into his house, killed him. That was in Asa, in Otukpo local government too. Maybe about 5-7 minutes driving distance away from Otobi town. Actually, it's Akpa, not Ankpa.
Okay.
Yes, it's Otobi in Akpa district. And before then, you know, the same Otukpo local government in Okpomaju, but that was earlier, a few months ago. 5 people were killed by Fulani herdsmen or headers, by whatever name you want to call them. And there was a whole lot of things. So it's been happening. And on Sunday, about, not this last Sunday, the previous one, 3 young men, all of them, headers, Fulani guys, were arrested in Ogoli, Nugboju, in the same Otukpo local government, you know. Before then, a few days before that time, either a day or 2 or 3, a Benue Links bus, and just about entering Otukpo from Makurdi, was attacked 14 people were kidnapped and taken into the bush. The security agencies gave a chase, and somehow they were rescued. But one of them was macheted and died, the lady. Of these 14, and that very night, they attacked again. Perhaps they were the ones escaping, we don't know. But the same group of gangsters, of headers, whatever they may be called, attacked the same Otobi. There is the multi-purpose dam under construction in Otobi town there by the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. They killed the security guy there, who incidentally is a pastor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God, but a security guard. Was killed, was shot, killed, and yet they didn't stop at that. They opened up his skull with a machete. So it is the barbarity of it, the fact that there is a climate of insecurity, of fear, and all sorts of things in the place. People can't move. People can't do anything. People can't just a few days ago, a young header who was born in the place, in the outskirts of Otobi town, in a place called Omebe, was born there, went to school in Idoma Community Secondary School in Otobi there.
A young herder.
A young herder, and has been associated. He's part of the community, more or less. Also posted on his Facebook page and called the people his Akweya enemies. Some of our leaders, I think the Benue State, the member representing Otukpo Akpa in the Benue State House of Assembly, escalated the matter to the security agency, and that informed us. We don't know what they did with that. That guy should have been taken in for questioning, at least to know why he made that post. Now, in the last 1 or 2 months, and then on the second day, the public holiday, that's Tuesday of Easter, there has been a whole lot of insecurity. That place has become like the headquarters of kidnappers.
Otukpo?
Not just Otukpo, just at the outskirts of Omebe, the outskirts of Otobi, around Omebe there, for a very long time. And so the people, and also the fact that the cows were eating people's crop, and the people said, we have too much of this. People were disappearing in that general area. And they went into the bush and said, look, let's conduct a search and know what is going on. And what the people were confronted with is mind-boggling. They saw traveling bags, saw panties, saw jeans, trousers, and all of that, and skeletons scattered all over the place. Obviously, people traveling who were kidnapped or taken hostage and killed, maybe raped, because quite a number of the panties they found belongs to ladies. So is that general insecurity that people went into the bar and said, look, this cannot continue. And then they said, look, these guys have to leave. Now, nobody was maimed, nobody was killed.
Which guys have to leave?
That the headers in the place had to leave the place because they were eating up people's crops, molesting people, and a lot of these things were traceable. People who were kidnapped, a professor at the Benue State University was kidnapped, I think, early last year or thereabout. Professor the professor of theater arts was kidnapped and kept for a number of days. People can find out from him what he saw. So these are not unrelated things, because in your intro, you were wondering whether what is going on in Jos, on the Plateau, is related to what is. There is a relation. And by the way, I'm National Secretary of the Middle Belt Forum. And so I have a global view within the Middle Belt of what is going on. What is going on in Jos, what has been happening in Benue, what has been happening in other parts of the Middle Belt, they are not unconnected at all. There appears to be an agenda of taking over the people's land, of changing the demography, of creating, of imposing on the people a pall of insecurity and fear. For whatever reason, this is, we don't know, but we know there is an agenda. The agenda is to change the demography. The agenda is to take over the people's land. And they are connected, they are interrelated. So you find this all over the entire Middle Belt. And now it's not just the Middle Belt, it's approaching the East. So it's the Middle Belt that has been standing as a bulwark against this.
Let me, let's track back a bit, because I think first again, it's important to express condolences to the people of Otobi community who currently will be in mourning as a result of as a result of this incident. I mean, I can imagine that if they're still, as I guess today night, we had a figure 7. This morning, you say the number has gone up to 11, and it's unclear whether the figures are still going to go up, knowing that there are still people in very critical situation in the hospital.
People who cannot be accounted for right now.
People who cannot be accounted for. So we certainly will keep our eyes with the people of Otobi. But let me track back a bit, because you also spoke about a number of other incidences that have happened around Otobi and within the Akpa, Otupo local government area. And then you mentioned one particular incident where you said that people had enough and they went to the bushes and they asked the herders there to leave.
Yes.
And they found all manner of things. When was this particular incident?
I can't. What's the date now? The public holiday was the Salah public holiday. Was Monday and Tuesday. This was the Tuesday. That's the last day of the public holiday. It was on that Tuesday that the people thought they had had enough, because they were just disappearing. Crops were just being destroyed. And mark you, it is not only Fulani herdsmen that were asked to take their cattle away. Why? Because but they in particular, it was their cattle that was doing the damage. There are indigenous cattle owners who have been tending their cattle. Those very few, fewer in number than these guys. But everybody was saying, look, move. In any case, the anti-open grazing, the open grazing prohibition law and ranching, the open grazing prohibition law and ranching law is still in place. It's still in place, has not been repealed. So simply comply with the law. Ranch your cattle, or otherwise take them away from here.
So that incident was not before the other incidences which you are documenting?
No. It wasn't before. This was on Tuesday. On the Tuesday, the last day of the Salah public holiday. That's like 2 weeks ago.
Sometimes when we speak with...
The Salah public holiday. That's like 2 weeks ago.
Sometimes when we speak with communities that have been affected, many times the community itself might not be the one that, has done anything to these, herdsmen. But oftentimes we hear that maybe another incident happened somewhere with herdsmen, and as such, it would seem that these people are back on a revenge mission, some in another community entirely. I'm just wondering, have there been, because Benue has been quiet, in fairness.
Benue hasn't been quiet, maybe underreported.
Well, when I say quiet, relative to what we witnessed in the time of, a few years ago.
No, let's call it by its name.
Yes, a few years ago, yes. When the former governor was there, and what led to the open prohibition law. Yes. Beg your pardon, open grazing prohibition law. Yes. So it has been quite relative to that time. I'm trying to use my terms very carefully. So now we're beginning to hear of killings again. Of course, it is natural to be very concerned because all of this has been on the down low. I want to also believe that over time, there would have been in place early warning systems whereby if something has happened in one community, all the other communities are put on alert to say, look, something has happened here. You people be careful in this other community. Has there been any such thing?
No. And I just told you, I just told you that there is a young man that made the post on Facebook to school in Doma Community Secondary School. There has never been a history of any kind of problem between the people and these herders. Never.
And nobody has called him to say, even his fellow friends have not called to say, what is going on? We think you're a son of this community, aren't you?
It is the fact that this happened a few days after they were asked to leave, to take their cattle, ranch them, or take them away. Now, how can that then be the basis for declaring the people? They've been there, excuse me, been there for over 30 years. Over 30 years. So they are part and parcel, in a way, of the, even though they have kept themselves aloof, they have not integrated. But this particular guy, Ahmed Bashir, has interacted more than any of them. More than any of the young people there. Quite a number of them have gone to school and all of that. It is after that they were asked to leave that the people discovered that the fellow, the guy, their leader, was actually the chairman, state chairman of Mieti Kautahori, the Fulani organization. Because they said they granted a press conference in Makurdi a few days thereafter. Nobody knew that he was the chairman of Mietiala. Nobody knew that he was the Ardo of the entire the Fulanis in the entire 9 local government areas. He's been there. Just that people have been very suspicious. Why are people always disappearing around this side? That area had become like the headquarters of kidnapping. A commissioner was kidnapped there not too long ago. Several people have disappeared there. Several people have been kidnapped within that short stretch. I refer to the professor of theaters in the Benue State University who was taken there. A lot of the kidnappings have been happening around there. So I think that what has happened has nothing to do with any reprisal. It is, again, what it is. This idea of taking over people's land. This idea of thinking that you can change the demography, take people's land, and create new settlements for yourselves without complying with the law. I don't think this is acceptable.
Let me ask you.
What is going on in Plateau has the same character with what has been going on in Benue, right from the time of Otom, that former Governor Otom you are talking about. He was the one who ensured that the world was aware of what was going on. Plateau has been talking about a genocide. It's happening across the entire Middle Belt.
Yeah, but let me ask you, what exactly has led to the relative calm that Benue witnessed, before this recent upsurge in, in attacks that we're seeing on this particular community?
My thoughts, and I've been thinking deeply about this. See what happened at the build up to the 2015 elections. Are we seeing a recast? Because it was a build-up to the 2015 presidential election, where there was a lot of agitation that power had to move to the north, and President Goodluck Jonathan was still talking about contesting the election. We saw a scale-up in the activities of insurgents. Are we seeing a recast of that? I don't know. Are we also seeing this idea that now that President maybe he has not declared his intention to run, but it's obvious that, from the body language of those close to him, that he might throw his hat in the ring in 2027. Is that what we are seeing? To dislodge, we have heard people talking about no powers to return to the north. Is that what we are seeing? We have seen the calm, like you say, relative calm in the last 2 years, almost 2 years, of the Tinubu administration. Southern Kaduna has been quiet to a large extent. The Plateau has been quiet to a large extent. The Benue has been quiet to a large extent. And all of a sudden, these things are happening almost as if there is a coordinating center. People should worry. People should think. And we cannot play politics this way. We cannot use the blood of human beings as the basis for campaign. We shouldn't be doing that. I don't know if there's a link, if there's a connection, if there's a connectedness. However, we should get people thinking. We saw this before. I've been through this part before. We shouldn't go that way. Now, what the president has done within the Middle Belt, particularly within the Middle Belt Forum, we have issued statements, not one, not twice, to commend the efforts in stabilizing communities in the Middle Belt in terms of security. Yet, we are now seeing a resurgence. What exactly is going on? The president should be asking questions, should be asking the people in charge of our collective security some questions.
Let me ask you, if this has any, the governor of Plateau State visited, even though, this is in Plateau, yes. But, I don't know whether what he said in that community, because he visited the people of Ziki community yesterday, he visited the Irigwe leader who has now lost about 52 of his own members of his, of his kingdom. And he said something which was quite significant, something to the effect that the solutions lie within the communities themselves. Let's take a listen to what he said.
If I will tell you the truth, I myself have been crying since yesterday because I had trusted God that all the arrangements were put in place, that this will not happen again. We have made investments in security. But like all human arrangements, sometimes they fail. And I want to admit that on Sunday night into Monday morning, we failed you. Please forgive us.
Well, I don't know if you heard the part, which I wanted you to hear in that particular area, but he spoke to the effect that, and first of all, he apologized to the people for their inability to be able to protect them, and went on to say that, they will have to find ways for communities to start defending themselves. But clearly, he also said that, the solution to these sort of attacks lie within the communities themselves. Would you say that communities, because I want to imagine that before now, especially in the time when insecurity was heightened, when every other time we're hearing, about these attacks, I want to believe that when this happened in how many communities, some other communities will wake up and say, we're not going to be sitting ducks waiting for some people to come and attack our communities, and they would have, fortified their communities somewhat. Do you think that as a result of the relative peace that had been enjoyed before now, would you say that communities had let their guard down, or was it that there was nothing in place?
Right. Now, it's not just the governor of Plateau State calling on the people to prepare to defend themselves. As far back as 2019, or was it 2018, General T.Y. Danjuma had accused the government of General Muhammadu Buhari of complicity, of collusion, in his word, and advised communities to prepare to defend themselves, advised them to arm themselves. Not too long ago, the DG of the State Security Service advised people to copy the Tafawa Balewa example, which is to arm themselves and defend themselves. But when you look at all of this, and communities, particularly in Southern Kaduna, you follow the trend, not just in Southern Kaduna. Then, people with machetes and sticks and then guns, hunters, will be ones who attempt to defend themselves after the massacre of their people. If you like, genocide of their people, will be rounded up, arrested, detained indefinitely. Some of them, their leaders were killed. In Kajuru, we saw how they were invited to the government house on their way back, a traditional ruler, and his men were killed, rounded up and killed. Is that kind of situation you ask people to defend themselves? There is a peculiar problem with the Middle Belt terrain. A lot of our areas in the Middle Belt are ungoverned spaces. You find a community here, and then for more than maybe 10, 15 kilometers, there is no other human being living there. It's a large expanse of land. How do you defend that kind of terrain with guns and machetes and clubs and sticks? While it is important that communities prepare to defend themselves, it is also important to note that the responsibility of the security of lives and property lies squarely with the state.
So tell us.
The state must, for instance, I just told you about the stretch of road between the outskirts of Otobi community that had become like the headquarters of kidnappers in the entire Zone C. Yet, yes, the police tried, they mounted a checkpoint there. But I think it is beyond that. I call on the Commissioner of Police, the Inspector General of Police, to immediately deploy a standing mobile police force in Otukpo, in that Otobi, because it is like the gateway to a large expanse of the distance. It goes to Ogbadibo local government, to Ado local government, to a lot of the places. So maybe it will be more mobile. They will be able to deal with it because of the expanse of land. So I believe that the people must, because of the situation that we find ourselves, must prepare to defend themselves. But we just saw the judgment of the Supreme Court upholding the condemnation, the condemnation of Sunday Jackson, who sought to defend himself. That has become the metaphor for the people of the Middle Belt. You seek to defend yourself, you are killed by the state. You don't defend yourself, you are killed by these marauders. That is the dilemma the Middle Belter finds itself. But in spite of that, Middle Belters should no longer throw up their arms in the air in frustration, in resignation. They must do something. If it is to carry machetes, they have to. If it is to carry sticks and clubs, they have to do something. No human, only a tree knows that they are coming to cut it down and stands there with that moving.
Doing something about it. So let me ask you then, you've spoken about the role that, authority has to, play in this particular matter.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you if the governor of the state has had something to say on this particular incident.
Yes, I must sympathize with the governor. This morning, as early as 5:30 a.m., I was aware that the deputy governor was on his way, despite the insecurity. From 5:30 a.m., was already on his way to Otobi. He's been in Otobi as early as 7 a.m. to commiserate with the people, to show support. And it was the same kind of visit by the governor a day after he left Otukpo, after the killings in Otukpo, after he left, the very next day, the 14-seater bus was attacked and the 14 passengers kidnapped from the vehicle. So I think that, unfortunately, under our constitutional order, the governor's role in terms of security is very limited. Despite the humongous amount of money governors keep as security vote. Actually, they have just, because it was former Governor Wike who said he was the chief logistics officer of the state and not the chief security officer because he didn't have control. Yet, this particular government in Benue State has been working on what they call, community livestock guards. That must be empowered, at least as a first line of defense. Must also work with the vigilantes as a first line of defense to protect the country, if for nothing else, to be the people who blow the alarm when these things happen. At least to resist minimally before the security forces move in. That the people can do. State governors must also begin to build consensus. Benue has been very divided politically. Within the APC, they are divided. Within the PDP, there is a division. Within the communities, there are divisions. People must come together. Because so long as the people are disunited, there will always be suspicion. Suspicion, once there is suspicion, insecurity can always be guaranteed. So the Benue people, I speak to the Benue people, they must come together to ensure that the security of their own lives, because it is Otobi today, the other day it was Okpomaju, the other day it was in Kwande, the other day it was... We must come together. The Domas and the teams are divided. Leadership must be brought to bear. People must provide leadership to unify the people so that we can be a true bulwark against any external aggressor, so that together we can work as one and ensure that our land is it's defended. Not just within Benue State. In Taraba, the Tills and the Jukus have been at themselves. In very many parts of the Middle Belt, we have a responsibility as leaders of the Middle Belt to ensure that the people come together. We can't continue like this. It is true that because of the economic deprivation, because of the marginalization and oppression over the years, right from the time of the colonial times, when our people were never conquered by any external aggressors, were rounded up by the British after the pacification and handed over to the Sultanate and the Caliphate to rule, and we became like serfs in our own land. Yes, that experience is there, but we should move beyond that experience and ensure that we begin to work together. Ethnic groups must come together because our destinies are tied together. We can no longer continue like this.
Well, you have, one certainly cannot fault what it is that you're saying. There have been questions to also ask as to what is now going to happen to the communities. Because over the years, this is not the first time we're having this conversation. Over the years, whenever it is I listen to this, I always hear the angle that says, oh, the Fulani people are not our enemies, that we have coexisted, with them for many years. And you also spoke of people who were born in your community, who have grown up in your community, they attended the same schools as your kids. What then happens to those people who are not, well, I say aborigines of your communities, but have over the years settled there and almost become have become members of your community, so to speak?
I tell you, part of the casualties, people were killed. One is an evil man who carries on business in the place. He operates, what do you call it now, a store, where he also sells drinks. The simplest way, we went in there and knocked him off with a few other guys. Two of the casualties are thief guys. They are not Idoma people. They are not from the place. There is a federal government college located in Otobi. There is also a research center of the Umudike, what's the name now? The University of Agriculture in Umudike in Abia State. Located there, their crop research center. There is the dam. There has been, so this is a community that is cosmopolitan. It's not just about the people who are indigenous to the place. Anybody can become a victim. So we are not just speaking for our people. Yes, we are speaking for our people, but we're also speaking for every other Nigerian. The children who are in school at the federal government college in Otobi there are not all from the place. The people who are who are teachers in the place are not all from the place. The people who carry on business in the place are not all from the place. The people from Munike are not all from the place. So this is not about just the indigenes of the place, even though they are the first line, the first people who will suffer in their numbers. I believe that, and the people have never had a history of discrimination. Perhaps Otobi and the entire Akpa community is one of the most cosmopolitan in the sense that it assimilates communities. But unfortunately, the situation we find ourselves in is that the people, the Fulanis, while they may attend school, and that is why we point out the example of this Ahmed Bashir, is the one who interacts. He's the one who goes to attend their parties and all of that. But the rest stay outside of the community. And it's not just in Otobi, it's not just in Benue. There should be some form of integration. These people should live amongst the people, integrate, adopt the culture of the people. There are Idoma people in states like Ondo who are in their second or third generations. They have become like, even though they still go home once in a while, where they call home their ancestral land, their ancestral origin. Yeah, they have so integrated, you hardly know. There are people in Ondo State. There are people in quite a number of them, you hardly know. There are people in Ondo State. There are people in quite a number of them. There are Gato people, Idoma people everywhere. Yet we live with the people. Why can't these people live with the people? That is why the ranching law, the open grazing prohibition law is important. Keep graze and yet live with the people so that you are integrated. That is the best way to go.
Well, we certainly will keep tabs on what is happening in Otobi community and also generally in Benue State as well as Plateau. We certainly hope that, these attacks, they don't have to happen again for us to be able to find a lasting solution to them.
We cannot hope. We must prepare to stop it.
Indeed.
Because once they start, they continue until they are stopped. So it is not about hoping, it is not about wishing, it's about doing something about it.
Well, we certainly look forward to that. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise early this morning. Mr. Abba Ejimbi is a former national president of the Akpa Community Development Association and also a former director of administration at the NCA, as well as the secretary of the Middle Belt Forum. Thank you once more for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
Well, we take a break at this time, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at what is happening in the south-south region of Nigeria, particularly Rivers and Bayelsa. Our next guest, traverses many communities. Find out who he is when we come back from this break.
Some persons from this state, particularly one George Turner, is threatening the peace of this state. And recently there is a Facebook report with his own number that is going to host the Minister of FCT in Tombia roundabout in Bayelsa. The minister is not from Bayelsa State. This is not FCT. This is Bayelsa State. All service commanders should be at alert that meeting must not take place in Bayelsa State. He can host his minister anywhere outside Bayelsa State. And I direct further that no public place, no public school, no public place, infrastructure should be used by anybody except by the approval of the state government. Every public facility in this state owned by the Bayelsa State government, nobody can use it except with the express approval of the Bayelsa State government. And nobody should import and export insecurity in their states to Bayelsa State. And so service commanders, you are put on alert that any of such gatherings should not and will not hold in Bayelsa State.
Well, there's another call. So let's have conversation with Alaye Tari Theophilus, who is the president, Ijaw Youth Council Worldwide. He is an environmental scientist and a specialist in population control and monitoring. He is also president of more than 30 million youths across the rivers, Bayelsa, Delta, Edo, Ondo, and Akwa Ibom states. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I won't expect us. We'll get by that and get back to you. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Good morning. You just heard the governor of Bayelsa State making that statement. Let's begin from there. How does that come across to you?
Thank you very much. You know, today, the Nigerian political atmosphere is so tense, and, 2017 haven't come, but they have already hit up the politics. So every governor, with what is happening in River State, want to be careful with what happens in their state, so that somebody will not go and convince those that are within the corridor of power in the presidency to declare state of emergency and remove a sitting governor. So everybody wants to be careful. So in as much as the chief security officer of a state, and you believe that if there are some activities about to be carried out, have some element of causing crisis, it is expected of you to swing into action. And I believe that is what the governor has done. He made a very clear statement that the FCT minister is not from Bayelsa State. And there is no reason. Election hasn't come. Politics, time for campaign has not reached. So there is no need of Bayelsa State hosting such a person. And with the atmosphere already being charged for the uncomplimentary statement that the FCC minister made against the Ijaw people. So I believe the governor made that his position for the best interest of Bayelsa State people and to avoid unforeseen circumstances that might warrant the declaration of state of emergency and the removal of another Ijaw son, or suspending another Ijaw son that is a governor. So I believe, to my understanding, the governor did it for the best interest of Bayelsans and Bayelsa State at large. That is what I have to say about that. I'm also calling on those new associate members that you look, politics hasn't come. This is time for governance. Rally around your governor to see how he can improve the living conditions of Bayelsans and give them the needed infrastructural development. The reason why we clamored for democracy is so that we can easily cry to those that we have elected into office for areas that we believe that they need to push it up to increase or improve our living standard.
Well, just
So,
a quick one,
election hasn't
Mr.
come.
Theophilus. If the president has not called for a state of emergency in Plateau State, despite the unfortunate incident there, and we haven't heard any significant, pushback from even the presidency about what's happening in Benue State, why would you imagine that a state like Bayelsa, that nothing has happened, could get a state of emergency?
The reason why I'm saying this, number one, River State, in as much as we are aware, is very calm and peaceful. But just because the executive arm and the legislative arm is having loggerhead, a state of emergency was declared. Zamfara State over time has been taken over by bandits, and that has not been declared state of emergency. Plateau State, as you have earlier said, Benue State, as you earlier said, has been overrun, including Kogi State, by herdsmen. At all those places, state of emergency has not been declared. But River State, that is having little political challenges, state of emergency was declared. And the elected governor, the people's governor, was suspended unconstitutionally. And an alien in the name of sole administrator has been appointed to see how River State resources can be carted away. So what I'm trying to say is that political interest supersedes every other thing. Human life does not matter in this current administration.
Well, you haven't quite addressed the question that I asked you.
How they can grab states.
Mr. Theophilus, you haven't quite addressed the question, the specific question that I asked, but we can actually go ahead and, talk about River State. This protest and counter-protests that we're hearing of, where is it coming from? It would seem like the people are now being pitted against each other. That isn't what, you want. That's not what anyone wants, is it?
Yes, you are quite correct. Why that is happening is that I told you before this time, I've made several statements that the reason why River State was declared state of emergency and the governor suspended is not because they want peace or stability in River State. What they're after is the resources of River State and how they can use River State funds to campaign and fund themselves for 2027 election. If not, a peaceful state as River State will be declared state of emergency. The beauty of democracy is that the executive and the legislative arm must be in loggerhead so that there will be check and balance. I don't understand why an administration will be asking for a cordial relationship between the legislative and the executive arm. The people elected the legislators to check the excesses of the executive. So it is expected that sometimes in democracy, the legislative and the executive arm must have some form of loggerhead. And that happened in River State. State of emergency was declared. So if Bayelsa State now happens to be that some people go for a protest, what makes you think that state of emergency will not be declared? And the reason why you are seeing protests and counter-protests is that the alien, that the sole administrator, the unconstitutionally appointed sole administrator, is bent on carrying out just a singular tax. And what is that tax? To see how he can dismantle the structures of the executive governor of River State, the person of Similaye Fobra, and hand over the state structures to the FCT minister, Yeso Wike. And with the actions he has taken,
Theophilus, if that was going to happen,
now he has appointed a sole administrator.
Just 1 second, Mr. Theophilus, if you can hear me, if that was going to happen in the first place, I don't think a state of emergency was needed, because the House of Assembly already sent a letter of impeachment notice to the governor. And if that were to happen, if that process had gone through, Well, we'll not be talking about a sole administrator. We'll definitely be talking about perhaps another governor altogether once the current governor at the time was suspended. So imagining that the appointment of a sole administrator would lead to the removal of the subsistent governor elected by the people and then handed over to someone else, I don't really know how that is going to happen. Can you tell us?
Yes, you see, that is what I'm trying to portray. The sole administrator was appointed, like Rivers State is now an agency of the federal government, where the federal government will wake up unilaterally and make pronouncements that the one that has been elected has been removed and another one has been appointed. If it happens today that after the 6 months, the president comes up with another statement that there is still no peace in Rivers State and the suspension should continue,
but
and they renew another 6 months and another 6 months, we will get to 2027.
Just a second. On that, Mr. Theophilus. On that, Mr.
Suspended.
Theophilus. Just 1 second. On that issue that you just raised, don't you think that the protests and counter-protests could give vent to a situation where there is no peace? And then that's what you are saying will now happen.
It's what I'm saying. So the sole administrators and his cohorts, the plotters of the state of emergencies, are the people behind the counter-protests. You remove an elected governor, an executive governor of a state, and the people are telling you that, look, we are not under military regime. We remove this man and bring back our governor that we gave the mandate to manage our affairs for 4 years. And the alien that is not even from Rivers State is now mobilizing people with Rivers people's funds that they should go to the streets and tell the world that we should remain in office till 2027.
So what would be your own, because we are running out of time, we are totally out of time, Mr. Theophilus. What would be your proposition now so that there can be peace? And then after 6 months from the date that the president announced the state of emergency, we can go back to our regular lives.
The sole administrator that has been appointed illegally or unconstitutionally should know his boundary. He is not from Rivers State. He does not have anything to do with Rivers People's Fund. And the arbitrary unconstitutional appointments that he is making, suspending already existing institutions and bringing in legal institutions and reappointing people, is not the way forward. If Mr. President really have Rivers people at heart, he should set up the committee that will commence the peace process between the legislative arm and the executive. What Rivers people need is peace and development.
Okay.
And not undemocratic steps that will further cause division in Rivers State.
Well, don't you think it would be a good idea? Just lastly, Mr. Theophilus, just a second. Don't you think it would be a good idea for you, leading about 30 million people, as you say, to make a representation to the presidency and say, Mr. President, we and a number of other interest groups in the state, this is our thinking, as opposed to going on the streets and mobilizing, unrest?
We just had an all-leisure meeting called by the INC to discuss and chart the way forward. That is the first step that we have taken. And in the coming days, we are still going to discuss the job nation, if we are going to be part and the next steps that we are going to take. We won't just come out and make statements. We are studying the situation that is happening in Rivers State.
All right, Mr. Thomas Theophilus, we sincerely appreciate your time.
We are on it.
Absolutely. We appreciate the time that you have spent to talk to us. At least now we're glad that for some good reason there is someone who is thinking about making progress. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Alaye Theophilus is president of Ijaw Youth Council Worldwide.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Amakwe, that's the show this morning. And for everyone, thank you so much for your time and for the privilege of being a part of your morning. Business Morning is next on the hour. I'm Ayo Makide. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much for sending in your feedback as well. Hopefully, we should be able to take a few of them tomorrow. Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.